Welcome to Underqualified Thoughts, where two brothers-in-law have conversations stemming from their daily lives. Expect authentic, relationship-building discussions that time capsule the early years of these podcasters' families, careers, and pastimes.
Welcome to Underqualified Thoughts. This is the second episode of Season 2, and we are excited to talk today about the current job market, even though it's not looking too great for many people. Preconceived Notions, Caleb is amending as he is looking for a job himself, and strategies companies are using to interview candidates. And of course, we're going to be doing this from our perspective. And to speak about our perspective, Caleb, how are you doing today?
I'm living that dream. How about you?
Are you actually living the dream right now?
It's been a long day, but every day given is better than not.
Wow. So generic, yet true at the same time. No, this still feels a little too put together for me. You know me, I love the meta of the first season, although I think I'll love the better audio quality of this season. But it's just weird doing this over Zoom, and this podcast wasn't preceded by me driving 40 minutes to your house and listening to the prior podcast, because I haven't listened to the season 1 finale where we interviewed Kendall, and I didn't listen to the first episode of this season.
Yeah. Well, and I told you I don't listen to any of them. I edit these things and slap them together, but, it is what it is.
Yeah. And, I've talked about I like listening to it to see where I can improve, but now I just have to actually just improve. Although I may improve by hearing people's feedback, because I now have 2 new friends who, I think through your posting on LinkedIn and tagging me, someone came up to me and was like, "Hey, my favorite podcaster." And I was like, "Oh no, this is not okay. What is happening?" And we got dinner with them, one of our couple friends here in Charlotte. And yeah, not the whole time, but I'd say there's a good chunk of our evening together where we spent talking about this podcast, what it's about, why we're doing it, whether or not they should listen, all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, our most beloved, and by beloved, I mean our longest shout out for Rachel. Rachel, I saw her for the first time since we talked about the podcast, and I started to talk to her about it. I was like, "Have you listened?" And she was like, "It's on my to-do list. It's okay. I'm going to do it." I was like, "Oh, well, you got to get there, because we talked about you for 10 minutes in one episode. So you got to move on. Got to get a move on."
We love the meta, don't we?
Well, no, I love the meta. I know that we're sacrificing the meta because, one, we're on a Zoom meeting, so we're on a time crunch here to get this done. And we're trying to actually talk about something other than our lives and what it's like to make a podcast, because we barely know what it's like to make a podcast.
We just need to make sure we include Rachel.
Yeah, get her listening or talk about it?
Both. Honestly, you said we don't really know how to make a podcast. In some ways, some podcasts might have been they might be embittered by talking a little bit more about their process, because too many are they're just boom, 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 boom. They just move straight through their content, which is fine, but it's not the worst. Talking about how we are and where we're at with the podcast. It's not the worst thing we could do.
Yeah, that, as well as chiming in our everyday lives, because humans over everything, as you would like to say.
Let's go.
Because it feels like we went and took a full 180. Obviously we took a 180 in that we were recording on our phones in your house. Now we've actually bought microphones and we're recording in separate locations. But it also feels like, we didn't have this time limit. We didn't have this structure. We were just free flowing in our thought and in our conversations. And now I'm looking at a screen with an audio file with a timer on it, knowing that, I only have 40 minutes on this free Zoom session to get this done, which is even less now because we were on the Zoom session before we started recording. So
yeah,
all this is becoming very interesting to manage. With that being said, I think somehow I'm in control of this episode. I don't know why you let me do this sometimes, but I'm going to kick it off to you, because I know that you've done the research more so than I have to talk about what the current job market is looking like as far as, all the layoffs that have come through. And then I'm going to pepper you with questions about a shift that you told me about in your job search.
Yeah, so a lot of this came about by, we every year, not every year, every week we go about writing out some ideas for the podcast. And this past week, one of those things that I just thought of was one of the current situations I find myself in my job search. Obviously, in the market, it might not be as written about or spoken about on like public news, but within LinkedIn, everyone's talking about it. And it's the layoffs, obviously. You know, for the job sector, there's, and I have the stats up with me from last week. 12,000 from Google laid off, 11,000 from the Meta, Facebook,
The
10,000
meta, love it.
from, yeah, I know, 10,000 from Amazon and Microsoft. And it just goes down the line of a ton of people that have been laid off. I think now the number is a little bit more than 200,000 people total that have been laid off within the tech industry. And as someone that's trying to enter the tech industry, that's transitioning from a different sector, it's a little bit alarming to look at that and be like, that's where I'm trying to enter. And also, how would I even enter now? Because there's so many positions that have been laid off. And obviously, the last component, there's all these people out there that just got laid off that are looking for other jobs. So you're up against tough competition. It's hard when you go up against someone that says, I'm X Microsoft or X Google or X, like that's a very strong title and holds a lot of weight. So anyway, that's kind of the background. And if you're not searching for a job right now, it's a little bit easier to kind of turn a blind eye to those people. But when you think about it, they have their severance package for the next 90 days, if they're fortunate. But the job search right now has actually increased from an average of, I want to say it was like 4 to 5 months to over 6 months to find a new job. And great experience. I mean, Andy, that's you. Looking for the job that you want and fits well. Part of it is that employees have a lot more personalization going on. They can, in a way, like they have a lot more freedom to kind of choose the role that they want, and the types of perks that come with that role. A lot of the individuals out there are saying, oh, for every large tech layoff, there's going to be a dozen other tech startups that arise from the ashes, from these things. And it's true. I mean, that's where a lot of the little companies will have opportunities that the large ones don't.
That's true. And of course, there's a lot that goes into like those numbers that you were talking about. Obviously, you mentioned, and I believe it's true for the most case, like having X Microsoft, X Google, X Amazon in your title is going to hold weight to it when you're in job interviews, especially because in this season, it seems like the layoffs are because of the company's overhiring, or at least that's what's been talked about. It's not talking about, the employees underperforming. But a
Yeah.
question that I ask is, and obviously I'm not trying to slight anyone who's been laid off, like, I wonder what the metrics are for laying off. Are they laying off underperforming people, or are they laying off, people who they hired for and their work
Mm-hmm.
dried up, like they were a
Yep.
really good worker and they just don't have a project to work on anymore? And I'm sure it's a spectrum in between, because we heard about layoffs during the peak of COVID, and it's kind of sounded like that the narrative around it was, the quiet quitting. It's like, hey, you've been sucking this company dry for the last 3 to 6 months because you haven't been doing your job while you've been at home and no one's been holding you accountable. So we're letting you go. But this one has more of the narrative where it's, the company's fault. So maybe they'll have a little bit more benefit of the doubt when going into job interviews. But also something you mentioned about the length of time. I wonder what your thought is on this. So mine was actually perfectly in the sweet spot, like 4.5 months, I think, from when I left my job to when I got one. And I would honestly say that I wasn't going 100% of job searching while I was in between jobs. Like, basically, I don't think I was putting my maximum effort in. But I wonder if this lengthened search process is because of the impending recession and overhiring and all these buzzwords that you hear. Do you think that your job search has extended this long because you're being rightfully picky about the jobs and the benefits that you have? And that's something new this time around.
I think initially there's kind of two, maybe even three segments of my search right now. Initially, I was just focused on one company. Um, there were some, and this is almost a little bit pre-recession. Like I think we are in the recession.
Yeah.
I think you
I think
can
we've been in
only
it for a
really,
while.
yeah, you'll be able to tell when in like 5 years. Like we were definitely in a recession in early November, or early October of 2022. But I think what happened was I was really focused on this one company. Lots of good things happening. That they spoke about positions opening up in January and opportunities on the horizon. Um, we get to January and there's nothing. Um, and that transition over the new year, I began realizing, oh, it's because like these types of companies need to kind of put up their walls and batten down the hatches because they don't want to have to be the company that lays off employees in a year or in 5 months because they're trying to make sure they don't have to even get close to where the big tech companies are. Um, so when I saw that happen, and no one's told me that, I mean, no one's directly said, "Hey, like it's because," but and no one really wants to say that. Like that's not
Hmm.
something that companies want to say. Um, but you can just observe it and tell. I mean, lots of companies that I've been targeting, not just the one, they're all very limited in what they need right now, if anything. I mean, they're far and few between.
Well, because
And for
what
me,
you're targeting, are you exclusively targeting startups or exclusively targeting work from home, flexible benefit jobs?
at first, I was just doing work from home, the benefits, HR tech startup type of companies, um, very narrow. And then
Hmm.
I kind of moved to remote work from home. Um, and now I'm kind of, and here we are today. I'm applying for jobs in Charlotte. Like I'm applying for places where I have to move and not move, but like I literally have to drive
Commute.
somewhere, commute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that what you call commuting? Just moving?
yeah. Like
I have to
it's
move in a
it's
car
traumatic.
45 minutes each way.
Yeah, and so it's not necessarily destiny yet. Like it's it's I guess what's the right way to say it? Like I could still get a job with one of these tech startups or HR whatever in like a year. But I can't just place my stake in that because I have things to do and things to pay for. We've talked before, we'll be fine. Me and my wife will be fine if we're still on the teacher pay. Um, but think about the broad scheme, in terms of being bored at my job and kind of just tired of the mundane. Growth for me is moving on and looking for the next opportunity, which you know leads me to new doors, hopefully.
And certainly new doors. And if we can keep that analogy going, you're taking your narrow hallway of job search and you're just trying to push
Mm-hmm.
the hallway wider and
Yep.
wider so that you have more and more inflow of opportunities to consider. So, with that
Yep.
being said, so it sounds like your priorities when getting a new job, if I can say it back to you, was you were looking for especially work from home, especially a company with flexible benefits. And then additionally, you were looking for something specifically in the HR tech space because that was the first company you were interested in. And then by being interested in that company, you got interested in the space. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
And so then you saw that the space was tight, whether it be tight with competition or tight with companies not really looking to expand much right now, more of, keep the doors open, stay, afloat during this tougher time. So is the main reason that your priorities have changed in getting a job just in the sense that you've, like, desperate's not the right word, but you've had the season where it's like, I'm looking for the cream of the crop. This is the only thing that I will take to leave my job. And now you're like, okay, I really am getting, like, is it like you have a deadline coming up? Is it you're just getting tired of searching and not finding anything and you just want to move before you find the ideal job?
Well, there's no deadline. Again, like I said, I'll be fine next year if I'm still teaching over here, but I think it's in a way I know that I could be earning a lot more than I am now. I know that in the future I need to be able to provide a little bit more than what I'm like forecasting in 5 years. I will need to. So even if it is just working a year or two at a place that's not exactly where I want to be long term, I know that after every recession, things change. Like there's a lot more in different needs. It's almost like in the past 5 years, we've kind of just been TikToking back and forth, good year, bad year, good year, bad year. And if I catch it on a good year, there's a lot more opportunities. So yeah,
Shout
to
out
answer
to
your
the
question,
TikTok reference there. You big social media guy.
yeah, that's right. Um, yeah, so definitely broadening horizons. Not just like blindly applying to places, but
Mm-hmm.
for example, one of our questions we're trying to look at is this preconceived notion about corporations. I originally thought that a lot of these larger corporations might
Say
just
it.
hire.
Call him out.
I can't do that. Um, might just hire based strictly on skill and ability. I've been talking to people about just what it looks like to be a leader in a larger corporation, and part of it is yes, they need the skills, but and this is where it broke my preconceived notions, but the interview process is much more behavioral than it is just can you do the task?
Oh
Great.
yeah.
We're going to take the highest degree. Like you
Did you
have a
not
master's?
did you not pick that up when I interviewed for my massive corporation?
No. I
No,
didn't.
yeah, like I'm sure we talked about it, and obviously, like, by no means am I throwing shade at you because how many times has someone given you advice and then like whatever a year later you're like, yeah, I just got this piece of advice, and then you have people are like, I've been telling you that for a long time. No, like I told you all of the interview questions that I had, or not all of them, but the majority of the ones, like a large portion of our interview was all behavioral. Like, what have you
Yeah.
done in the past in this situation? What would you do in this situation?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like I just view these places as you're just going to be lost in a sea of people, and that they bottom line, they just want the
Which
money. They want highest performer.
which it that I mean that could be the case. The reason that those stories exist or that perception exists is because it has happened. But
Yeah.
obviously, it can get blown out of proportion. You think that that's every scenario. Um, but before, I mean, I just can't move on. Look at you hijacking this interview flow by just saying, "Oh, here's a question Andy's going to ask. I'll just answer it now." You monster. Because I was planning on building up this scale. I was like, all right, your priorities have changed. So because your priorities have changed, are you considering new jobs? And you just jumped that ship and you're like, yes, I am. I'm considering corporations, and here are my preconceived notions.
Maybe I can go ahead and share though. Like I explained it to my dad, kind of like the shift in priorities, um, because of where we're at. Like I'm not offended by this idea of, and this is huge for you to know. Like I'm not offended by this idea of driving 45 minutes into Charlotte or an hour into Charlotte and back. At the end of the
Whoa.
day, whoa. Because
I
I know that.
I just have to
Good.
say, I've been saying this to you for the past few months, and you've been telling me no every single time, but you are becoming our father-in-law,
Don't say
especially
that.
if you pick
Don't
up a
say
job
that.
especially if you pick up a job at the company he currently works at. But at the very least, if you pick up a job in Charlotte where you have to commute in and out from the great thriving metropolis of China Grove, North Carolina.
You know, it is what it is. I told him, I told our father-in-law, I said, I'm not going to, I said, at this point, I'm not leaving, um, I think I said, there's nothing off the table. Like, there's very few things I'd probably say no to right now.
All right,
Not
start
out
your
of
own business then.
desperation. What?
I said start
Yeah,
your own business
we
then.
could talk about that too. I'm actually talking to someone on Tuesday about that, because this person started their own business, and I think both are difficult regardless of what you
Oh
do.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
you know, there's just a lot of, there's nothing off the table. The only thing that I would say is off the table is I don't want to be a teacher for 27 years in public education. Like that's
That
off the
and
table probably.
yeah, staying there forever. And I suppose the other one would be, I don't think you would pull my situation where you would leave your job so that you could solely focus on your job search to get a new job.
Ooh, yeah, no, I can't. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'll bleep this out. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. But McCamey put in her notice yesterday. Um, so here we are. Like I'm providing for the family. There's no
Sole
backup.
provider, breadwinner, baby.
That's right. And our
That's
budget has been
funny.
good.
Sorry, I know where you're going, and I'll bring it back to that. But that's funny because she started teaching a couple years before you, so your whole marriage, she's been the breadwinner, and so now you just get to fight for
Hmm.
the lead, which is what. That's funny. Caitlin and I think in 2020 I made more money than her, and I'm pretty sure in 2021 she made more than me, or like basically we've been fluctuating back and forth. Like we joke about it like it's a battle of who's going to be breadwinner. But Cami just forfeited, and she's like, "I've had it. It's been a good run. I've had it for 3 years. Here you go. You can take it now."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's pretty funny.
but as you were saying, you were going to allude to how your budget is currently set up.
Oh yeah, just for the context of the people, and I encourage everyone to do. And I think, and everyone can do their own thing. And this is where if we ever had like hundreds of thousands of people listening, they'd probably hate some of this. But I'm a strong believer in if you have two people working that are making above like a normal wage, like above 40,000 a year, there's no reason, and you live in a normal, modest sort of like scenario, there's really no reason that you have to be living in a way that spends both of those paychecks. And so we've been obviously living in a relatively fortunate situation, in the past 3 or 4 years with the house and both cars paid off, and just things like this, such that McCamey's check goes to savings, and mine pays for the things, and still goes, even a portion of my paycheck goes to savings. Um, and through that, we're able to, what is it, the thing that Dave Ramsey says? Bring him into the conversation.
What, the whole just debt free mantra?
Debt free, but he says something about, um, be like no one else so you can live like no one else.
Yeah, I think it might be spend like no one else so you can live like no one else. Maybe save like
Yeah,
yeah,
something
something.
like
It's
that. Yeah,
do something financial
yeah,
so that you can live like no one else.
yeah. And so, that point being said, obviously, if we enter the next year with a teacher salary alone, um, first year it might not be a problem. Second year might, third and fourth year it might not be a problem. But at year 5, 6, 7, 8, when our kid is older, like I want to go ahead and I want to take them places. Like I want to go to Disney with them. Like I want
Mm-hmm.
to pay for them to do ballet, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
All right,
Um,
mark it here. Mark it here at the whatever
that's
minute
right.
mark. Your kid has to at least try out ballet once.
Hey, I'm just putting that out there because I don't want to say golf lessons because I know someone's going to throw some shade at me. But honestly, I think it would be epic if my
Well,
kid,
that
like,
because
if
you wouldn't have to pay for golf lessons, you would just teach her.
that's right. And you know how much bonding, you know how much social norm would be broken there if I was out there on Saturday morning. I'm not with the dudes. I'm with my daughter at the golf club. I'm playing golf with my daughter. You know how many social norms that just breaks, and
Well,
how
that's
much
what
I'd
I'm
love
trying
that?
to. Every single person that I see at the climbing gym who has a baby, one, I'm going to talk to them. Two, basically anytime I go to the climbing gym and I see like a dad or a mom with a daughter like under the age of 10, I'm like, yes, goals. This is
Yep.
what we're going for.
It's similar to, and there's a clear distinction between parent daughter, parent son relationship. I mean, yeah, my brain is fried, but like that and like we're friends. It's not like we're friends. We're friendly. What I'm trying to say is there's a dynamic there that's different. Um, One of maturity and growth, and like, yes, you're friendly. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, there's this idea sometimes in popular social circles where, and probably not very Christian circles, where the parents are the best friends to the kids,
So you're more so friends than you are you're not wearing
the
this hat
leader,
all the
and
time, but like you're
yeah,
the
yeah.
leader, the authoritarian, the disciplinarian, things like that.
There's a mixture there that has to be there in order for growth. Um, I mean,
Like, are you
I
saying
have,
there needs to be a balance between friendship and then being able to put on the disciplinarian hat if need be?
yeah, 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 absolutely. Um, anyway, and it's kind of similar to my relationship with my students, but obviously there's an intimacy with my kids that will be there that's not there with my students.
Yep.
Not there's not this overwhelming sense of love that I have for my students. Like, it's anyway, and I think
It's
that's going to
different.
be the most. Yeah, I think there's like this. It'll be really exciting whenever Miriam comes along. Um,
You should,
because of that.
you absolutely need to go back and listen to this stretch because I'm here for it. That was probably your best tangent in the history. Like, you started with talking about your job search to like what the future looks like for you and McCamey's income to how you're currently living out your budget to what your goals are uh, that you're saving money for to then what you're looking to spend your Saturdays with Miriam, how that's countercultural, and then how that element is needed so that you can have a healthy relationship with her as a leader and friend and authoritarian.
Sweet.
What a string. I feel like you just remember when we were talking about calling this podcast external processing? That would have been like, this is why we're calling it this, because look what just happened right there.
That's funny.
And so then while you were talking, the little, nice little 10-minute heads up on Zoom came, and we're down to 7.5 minutes now. So as much as I would love to run more down that rabbit trail with you, someone has to keep us on track. And I'm shocked that it's me. So to circle back offline, to go back to what we were talking earlier, you kind of talked about the preconceived notions you have. I don't think we have time to talk about where the root of those preconceived notions came from because, like, generally speaking, preconceived notions come from stories that have some level of truth in it, and whether it's
Yeah.
blown up out of proportion and it's made seem more regular than it actually is, or if it was some different scenario perceived incorrectly, whatever. There's some truth in it. Just how much of it and how accurate and how pervasive is it going to be in every situation. So we don't have much time to get into that. We talked about your priorities changing, mainly because you just are looking for a new opportunity and you see that the industry is getting tighter, both with jobs being offered as well as competition. So how has I guess the question, the kind of the finishing arc then is, with those preconceived notions, what happened? And I guess you really talked about that already. What preconceived notions have fallen down that is now making you consider looking at a larger corporation?
Mostly, yeah, just the notion that they're uncaring, not thoughtful, that they just want the highest providing resource, like master's degree with 10 years of experience. Um, it just is freeing to know that maybe they do want me. There's someone out there in the corporate world that can value a third year, fourth year teacher with the skills that I have. It might be a grind, it might not be something that's just the most enjoyable or most fun. But in the aspect of, career hopping, sometimes you do have to kind of take the bottom rung so that you can transition into the thing that you do enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt that. I think often what happens is we kind of like we know that companies are made up of people, but we still view them as like the company in the sense that like yes, like the company's mission is to meet the bottom line and maybe they have some altruistic or some other secondary um, mission that they're working towards, but ultimately like they're human beings inside that corporation. And you can have a very personal relationship with your manager and your teammates and they feel like humans, they feel pretty close to you because not essentially at the level of family, but like, you see them 40 hours a week at minimum if you're working in the office with them. So you have that bond there. But then, of course, once you go up the corporate ladder, like I don't have a personal relationship with the CEO or whoever's beneath him or whoever's beneath him who's like, tiers above where I'm at. And so I guess that's where it kind of gets that, it gets washed into just being this massive conglomerate who doesn't care about you. But one of the best connections that I made and one of the most real human experiences I had while going through this job searching process was I talked to a VP of a department at a massive international bank that's headquartered here in Charlotte. And so, look at that on paper. You're like, oh, I'm a cog in a machine, and they're having a conversation with me to figure out if I can be a good working cog in their machine. But then she was incredibly personable, asked me a ton of questions, was really relatable, sharing stories about her life. And then when she asked me why I was looking to leave my job and I told her, she basically was like, she validated it. She's like, yeah, she's like, if you looked at my resume, you'd be like, why did you jump around so much? Like, and how did you get here today? And she said she's a firm believer that sometimes you have to go through a couple years and a couple different jobs to know what you don't want, and that's okay. And when I heard that, that was like a weight off my back. I was like, perfect. Like I can just be open and honest in my interviews and say like, hey, I'm leaving this job because I didn't like it. And I'm looking to see if this is an opportunity where I would fit in and like it as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that's a word of advice for all of our 2, maybe 3 listeners, as well as you going into your job search of, yeah, it's very easy. Even that I'm in the company now, I feel like I'm just a cog in the machine certain days when things aren't going well or, I'm 3 weeks into my job and I still can't do my job because I don't have access to all of the systems that I need.
Yeah.
There's still going to be those frustrations there, but they're not all robots.
Yeah, it's true. Humans over everything else.
There it is. Bring it back.
You got to believe.
Yeah, that's the thing. Also, because if you're personable and relatable and just showing some of your flaws and how you're a human in an interview, then it just makes it even more likely that you'll find a situation where you're treated like that in your job.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And then it makes it easier because you don't go from, which I think I might struggle with at this job because I put on a pretty good, because I was jumping industries and because I probably was putting on a show, was like, I can do all these great things and provide value. And now I'm here. I don't feel like I'm providing value and I don't know how to say that. So there's my tangent for the episode.
Oh, it's good. I feel like we might circle back to that in a couple weeks, 2 weeks maybe. See how you're doing over there.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, just to concisely say it, the job itself hasn't gotten better, but my perspective about the job and how it fits into my life has gotten better, and therefore it doesn't seem as bad.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been good. Good debrief. It says less than a minute on the Zoom.
I know.
Hey guys, if anyone wants to donate so that we can get a upgrade on this Zoom, just let us know. You can always call us, or at this point, send me a LinkedIn message towards us at the platform. One of the two.
Or we can just meet in person.
That's true. We'll get up sometime with that. It'll be good.
All right. since you're about to get cut off from me, I'll say goodbye to everyone, the tens of ones of people who are listening, and goodbye to you as well.
Peace.
Peace.